there's a fundamental math problem here. There is a constant reiteration of waste, fraud, and abuse. Sure, that's great. What is the identified amount of waste that this committee has identified? Because what the order that's been sent down here is find $880 billion. Not there is $880 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse. It's find $880 billion. And so we have not heard a single concrete number of the amount of waste that's been identified. We have not heard a single concrete number on the amount of abuse that's been identified. And there's just kind of this vague magic wand around waste, to my colleague from California's point. And waste is being used as a very large word here, because what's being suggested is that long-term care is wasteful in America, that children's health insurance is wasteful in America, that poor people seeing the doctor is a waste, that all of these people are disposable, that the elderly are disposable. So I think the problem here is that the numbers don't add up. The numbers don't add up. $880 billion is a devastating cut to Medicaid, and given that 30% of Medicaid dollars also go to Medicare, it's also an attack on Medicare, to Medicare recipients. And so while I completely understand the idea that there should not be waste, that there should not be fraud, and that there should not be abuse, $880 billion is not that. This is an attack on Medicaid, and anyone who votes on this budget this week is voting to cut Medicaid in America and voting to gut health care for Medicare recipients in America. There's just no other way around it.
At this point, support for this MAGA Republican Party has no other excuse than being in favor of wholesale distribution of wealth to the richest and corporations. Regular Americans that cheer on these moves can't claim that they were fooled. It's blatantly obvious, just like the other promises Trump has immediately broken.
We're no. Democrats are no on this budget. It is outrageous that you all have the audacity to come here with this budget that harms so many Americans and ask us to support billionaires and think we're going to buy it? You think we're going to support it? Well, you got another thought coming. We ain't doing it.
You'll read and hear a bunch of ignorant responses to Representative Waters and AOC's direct opposition to the GOP budget that has nothing to do with their points about the plan to raid Medicare and still blow up the deficit. You may hear MAGA say that it's just a bunch of Democrats that are afraid of being exposed for waste, fraud, and abuse. But what about the very conservative Thomas Massie?
I'm a no.
Is there anything?
Look what, let me, their own numbers. If the Republican plan passes under the rosiest assumptions, which aren't even true, we're going to add $328 billion to the deficit this year. We're going to add $295 billion to the deficit the year after that, and $242 billion to the deficit after that, under the rosiest assumptions. Why would I vote for that? No, I'm a no.
This no confirms.
This is a no.
Why? What? Why?
They're talking points. Look. These are not something I made up. This is the leadership's talking points. It adds $328 billion to the deficit. It adds $295 billion to the deficit the year after that. The only way they get to this magic thing where it's not going to kill our country is 5 years from now, they imagine that 2.5% growth accumulates, and that even right here they say they're going to cap discretionary spending. You think we're going to cap discretionary spending and then spend at the rate of inflation after that? That has never happened. So their assumptions are wrong, but even if you take their assumptions at face value, they told us in there they're going to increase the deficit in 2025 by $328 billion. And I've been here long enough. I've been here 12 years, so I've seen a 10-year plan or two come all the way to 10 years. Under Boehner, we had these 10-year plans. Under Ryan, we had these 10-year plans. Anything past the third year never happens. Thanks.
Mr. Speaker, will the budget resolution
Are you planning
pass
to move
today?
tonight?
Massey must know that his life is in danger from the way that he scooted on down the hallway before Mike Johnson walked by to hear him speaking some truth about their plans. Don't forget, Thomas Massey's the same guy that argued for schools to arm teachers and was in favor of Matt Gaetz during his issues with teenage girls enough to want him confirmed as Attorney General. So he's no rhino that's been captured by the Democratic Party. But Mike Johnson is definitely a huge liar that's eager to lie and help Trump and Musk destroy American lives.
You said that this is just the start of the process. Can you say unequivocally that further down the line there won't be any cuts to Medicaid programs?
Yeah, so look, let me clarify what we're talking about with Medicaid. Medicaid is hugely problematic because it has a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. Everybody knows that. We all know it intuitively. No one in here would disagree.
Okay, pause for a second. So every time you hear these MAGA politicians make definitive statements like, everyone knows that, we all know it, no one would disagree, it's a tired, played-out Trump-like tactic that they hope will keep people from challenging them for actual evidence. Remember that as Moses Mike Johnson continues his lying.
We had a hearing in budget just last week, or week before last, and they asked the experts, and the estimate is, I think it's $50 billion a year in fraud alone in Medicaid. Those are precious taxpayer dollars. Everybody is committed to preserving Medicare benefits for those who desperately need it and deserve it and qualify for it. What we're talking about is rooting out the fraud, waste, and abuse. Every taxpayer, it doesn't matter what party you're in, you should be for that because it saves your money and it preserves the programs so that it is available for the people who desperately need it. That's what we're about.
For years, this party has said that they support Medicare, won't touch it. Then that they have to do something with it, but not much. And then you have yo-yoing back and forth between calling a disaster that needs to be a part of tough conversations and making sure that it's solvent. The constant moving target on these programs is strategic, so that their supporters really never know what the reality is other than what they tell them it is, so that they simply accept the eventual conclusion that it needs to be gutted under the guise of extreme nefarious fraud.
From the very beginning of this movement, I've made a promise to American seniors. I will always protect Medicare and Social Security. As president, that's exactly what I will do, and that's what I did when I was president of the United States. I protected it.
Don't lie to them and say, oh, we don't have to deal with entitlement reform. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. It's the reality. I'm always going to tell the truth. Is it going to hurt? Yes, but for our kids, they know they're not going to get it anyway.
Sir, can we get a pledge to stand with President Trump against cuts to Social Security and Medicare benefits?
I think, you know what, when we look to reduce our national debt, I think these should be on the table. And I do believe at the end of the day, there will be some cuts.
There are cuts to Social Security and Medicare.
Yes.
Entitlements ever be on your plate?
At some point they will be. We have tremendous growth. We're going to have tremendous growth. This next year, it'll be toward the end of the year. The growth is going to be incredible. And at the right time, we will take a look at that. You know, that's actually the easiest of all things, if you look.
You changed your outlook on how to handle entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Mr. President. It seems like something has to be done, or else we're going to be stuck at 120% of debt to GDP forever.
So first of all, there is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting.
Nothing is sacrosanct. Nothing. They're going to put everything on the table.
That's what they told lawmakers. Everything is on the table, and that includes Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Yo, MAGA supporters' heads must be spinning from all the ever-changing positions that they take. But they never stop to think that maybe they shouldn't trust a group of liars that refuse to tell them their plans. They're being strung along long enough just to keep them tame until it's too late. But the one constant that they're tied to is that the people warning them of this plan, they're the bad guys.
I rise today to oppose this so-called budget resolution, which is one of the greatest heists in American history as they loot the Treasury to give permanent tax breaks to billionaires at the expense of millions of Americans. We're talking about cuts to healthcare, Medicaid, Medicare, literally 250,000 New Mexicans who will be unable to access care, cuts to income and food assistance, billions of dollars that goes to families to keep food on the table and a roof over their head, and to give tax breaks to billionaires. They're going to cut vital programs that go to our lowest income and most vulnerable families. These cuts are cruel. They are unnecessary. They are undemocratic. And they will blow a hole through our deficit spending by $4 trillion. Because this is not a budget resolution. This is a blueprint for suffering. Or, as Elon Musk put it over the weekend, the spoils of war. Because these guys don't care how many people they hurt or how many families are going to suffer. It's about power and greed, and the GOP is enabling them.